After I was fired, my old boss sued me for stealing clients in the courtroom. My lawyer simply asked him to read the key person clause in the client contracts. The judge looked at him and said, "I'm gonna need your laptop, your badge, and about 5 minutes to pack your things." That's how Darren, my boss of 8 years, ended it. No thank you. No handshake. No goodbye lunch. Just a conference room with stale coffee and a junior HR rep trying not to make eye contact while I stared at a termination packet thicker than the client playbook I built from scratch. I sat there frozen, the fluorescent lights buzzing like they were mocking me. 23 clients I brought into this firm, 17 high retention accounts, 5 national brand turnarounds directly credited to my name in quarterly reports, and Darren, the man who once called me his client whisperer, wouldn't even say the word thank you. "Just reshuffling," he said. "Cost optimization. New direction. Some BS about lean teams with diversified ownership." Ownership. That word hit me like a brick because we both knew whose shoulders this company stood on, and I wasn't even given the courtesy of an exit interview. I walked out carrying a banker's box filled with the corporate equivalent of a morgue drawer, branded notebooks, a dying succulent, a framed photo of our first agency award win. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. That would have made it easier for them if I looked like the bitter one. No. I walked past every intern, every colleague, every account manager with my back straight and my mouth shut like a good little fallen soldier. Darren didn't even come out of his glass tomb office. He just stood behind the tinted pane, arms crossed, pretending to be on the phone, probably talking to legal about how to spin this without triggering a discrimination suit. I didn't give him the satisfaction, but what he didn't notice, what he never paid attention to were the details, the small ones. How I took my hard copy client contract binder with me, not out of spite, out of instinct. You don't stay in this business without a survival reflex, and mine was already screaming that something wasn't adding up. I didn't tell anyone what happened, not at first. The official line was taking time off to recalibrate. I updated my LinkedIn with something vague. Spent 2 days trying to breathe through the silence. Don't realize how loud office life is until you're alone with your refrigerator humming like a metronome for existential dread. On day 3, I got a call from Ruth. She was the Global Accounts VP for Tenera Foods, one of our biggest clients. I picked up trying to sound casual. "Hey, Ruth. Everything okay?" She didn't say hi. Didn't ask if it was a good time. Just this sharp intake of breath followed by, "Are you okay?" I froze. Why wouldn't I be? "Told us you were on extended leave," she said, her voice dipping like she didn't believe it. "But you didn't say anything. That's not like you." I wanted to say 100 things. That I was blindsided, that I gave everything to that place, that my name was on every damn win Darren paraded in front of the board. Instead, I just said I'm managing. She was quiet for a moment. "Then if you decide to do anything next, anything at all, please call me first." That stuck with me, not the offer, the phrasing. Not if, when, like, she already knew I wasn't going to stay gone for long. By the end of the week, 3 more clients reached out, each one with a version of the same question. "Why didn't we hear it from you?" Because I didn't even get a chance to say goodbye. Because Darren didn't think I was worth a farewell email. Because in his mind, the business was bigger than me, and maybe it was. Something about the way Ruth said "please call me first" crawled under my skin like a live wire. Like, maybe, just maybe, the business wasn't what he thought it was. And that's when I remembered something from a meeting 2 years ago. Something Darren had dismissed as legalese fluff when we were finalizing a client onboarding doc. A clause, 1 line, buried in 10 pages of contract boilerplate, a phrase I hadn't thought about since the day we signed it. But now, how it glowed in my mind like a red warning light. And I had a feeling Darren had no idea what he just walked away from. It started with a post-it note, bright yellow, curled at the edges, slapped onto a cold French press in my kitchen, scrawled in my own exhausted handwriting. "Remember who you are." That was week 1. My world had shrunk to a coffee mug, a laptop covered in old company stickers I hadn't peeled off yet, and a bruised ego wrapped in fleece pajamas. No LinkedIn posts. No press releases. No revenge TikTok set to Billie Eilish. Just quiet. And then my inbox started humming like a hive that hadn't forgotten the queen. The subject lines were polite. "Checking in. Hope you're well. Quick question." But the undertones were seismic. Clients who'd once needed 3 assistants just to get 5 minutes on my calendar were now sending direct emails to my personal Gmail at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. Ruth was first, of course. She always moved fast. We grabbed a Zoom coffee. She wore a Tenera Foods hoodie and no makeup and said, "I have budget for a project. It's small, but I want you on it." I tried to smile. "I'm not really set up right now. I mean, I don't have a team or a business bank account. I'm still figuring out what this is." Ruth waved a hand like I just told her the Wi-Fi was acting up. "Doesn't matter. You're the one we trusted, the reason we stayed with Darren's firm this long." Just send me your terms. Terms? I didn't even have a logo. But I said yes. 2 days later, the head of growth from Blixen Hardware reached out, then a senior director from Juno Wellness. By Friday, I had 4 back-to-back video calls and a legal pad full of scribbled client asks. Not sales pitches. Not vague interest. These were people ready to jump ship with me at the wheel, which terrified me because I knew Darren, and Darren didn't lose quietly. He had a stable of lawyers that billed hourly like surgeons. I imagined his face the moment he realized clients were defecting, that red flush that crept up his neck when the illusion of control cracked. I could feel it before it happened, like a barometer drop before a tornado. So I played it safe, said all the right things. I'm not soliciting, I repeated like a prayer. This is just a casual conversation. Still, something gnawed at me, a memory that wouldn't settle. That phrase again, the clause, I remembered it from the Tanneray onboarding contract. Key person designation. Legal insisted it stay in, but Darren always brushed it off. Clients don't care who signs their emails, he'd said once, slapping my back like I was just another cog. But what if they did? I opened the old file cabinet under my TV stand when I hadn't touched since our office went hybrid. Inside, till organized by client name and fiscal quarter, were printed copies of every major contract I'd ever signed on the firm's behalf. My old habit, Darren hated paper. I never trusted PDFs alone. I flipped to Tanneray. There it was, page 7, section 4.2. In the event that Olivia Reyes is no longer the primary strategist assigned to Tanneray Foods, the client reserves the right to terminate or renegotiate the agreement without penalty. I blinked. Just a right, a contractually guaranteed one. I pulled out 2 more folders, same language. Olivia Reyes is designated as the key person for this engagement. It wasn't fluff. It wasn't symbolic. It was legal cement. The next morning, I scanned 5 contracts into a shared folder labeled Potential Defense. I didn't even know what I was defending yet, but something told me it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And if Darren wanted to play dirty, well, he should have read the fine print. The 5th time I reread the clause, my fingers stopped trembling. This agreement is contingent upon the ongoing involvement of Olivia Reyes as the principal strategist. Should Ms. Reyes cease to provide direct oversight, the client may terminate the agreement without penalty or prejudice. 7 contracts, 7 clients, all with nearly identical wording. Had written the language myself 3 years ago after heated conversation with a paranoid procurement director who didn't want to be bait and switched post-signing. Darren had rolled his eyes at the time, muttering something about how we weren't building cults of personality, but I pushed it through anyway. Now here it was, like a neon-lit trapdoor under Darren's entire case. I didn't throw a party. I didn't pop champagne or scream into a pillow. It's not how people like me celebrate. Instead, I quietly opened a new browser tab and typed Business LLC Registration New York, then I called Diane. Diane was my friend, ex-roommate, and the best small business attorney this side of the Hudson. We once split a bottle of Riesling on a rooftop and swore we'd never sell out. She'd sold out. I joined Darren's firm. We both survived. Now I needed her. She picked up in 2 rings. Me, you're finally starting your own thing. I didn't even greet her. I need to show you something, I said. It's legal. I think it's important. I sent her a PDF with the subject line Key Person Clause Potential Leverage. 10 minutes later, she called back laughing. Not a happy laugh. The kind of sharp, throat-deep laugh that said, "Oh, he's fed." I mean, she said, still catching her breath, this clause, it's surgical. Did you know what you were doing when you wrote it? Hesitated? I thought I did. Now I'm not sure. She didn't even pause. It's airtight. If those clients came to you voluntarily and this clause exists in their agreements, Darren's got nothing except maybe a bruised ego and an ulcer. I leaned back in my chair, suddenly aware of the silence in my apartment. The old floorboards creaked like they were listening in. What do I do next? I asked. Diane's voice softened. You start onboarding officially. Build the business. Build the wall and send me everything. Contracts, emails, receipts. We'll be ready if he tries anything. And so I did. The next morning, I registered Ray's Strategy Group LLC. The name felt weird at first, like trying on someone else's coat. But when the confirmation email came through, something shifted. Not hope, not revenge, just clarity. I opened a blank document, typed Welcome Packet Ray's Strategy Group, drafted a new client agreement, clean, modern, but with the same clause now front and center, this time in bold. By noon, I'd onboarded Ruth. By 5, 2 more signed without hesitation. They didn't ask who else worked for me, didn't care if I had an office. They just wanted me, the same way Darren never understood they always had. At 6:17 p.m., I poured a glass of bourbon, sat on my couch, and reread every single page of those original contracts one more time, not to reassure myself, but to remember I hadn't stolen anything. I was the thing. And for the first time since that humiliating walk out of the office, I wasn't afraid anymore. The letter came on a Thursday, delivered by a courier who looked like he hated his job almost as much as I hated reading what was inside that envelope. Big red stamp, confidential legal notice. I knew it was coming. Darren's silence was too loud, too long. He didn't call, didn't email. No passive-aggressive posts about the dangers of overestimating personal value in team settings. Just radio static. That's how you knew the bomb was already airborne. I opened it with a steak knife, hand steady, but jaw clenched. 4 pages. His firm's letterhead, legally stacked like bricks meant to crush, cease and desist from further interference with existing client relationships, immediate termination of all services offered to clients bound by non-solicitation clauses, legal remedies will be pursued if activities persist. No signature from Darren himself. Of course not. Just some junior partner from the in-house legal team. Probably didn't even know who I was until 2 weeks ago, but I could smell Darren in the wording. That smug mix of threat and denial. He couldn't decide whether I was beneath him or terrifying. I forwarded it to Diane. Subject line, "It's official, war has been declared." She called within 5 minutes. No pleasantries. He doesn't have a leg to stand on. I'm still rattled, I admitted, pacing between my kitchen island and the fridge. He's accusing me of breach, interference. Hell, the word misappropriation is in there, and we've got key person clauses in black and white, Diane said. They came to you. We have timestamps. No outreach. No solicitations. You didn't break anything. He's bluffing. But now that he's escalated, so do we. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. You think he's scared? I think, she said, he knows exactly what he lost, and he just realized it's never coming back. By Monday, the lawsuit hit the wire. Darren Lowell, managing partner of Caldwell Lowell and Associates, files civil complaint against former employee Olivia Reyes for unlawful interference and breach of fiduciary responsibility. Not just filed, but publicized, leaked, more likely, timed to perfection. That week was the Firm Connect Leadership Conference in Chicago, our industry's Coachella. Executives, vendors, media outlets, everyone who mattered under one roof. Suddenly, my name was in whispers across the trade floor, not for my work, not for my legacy, but for being that woman who stole half the clients and triggered a lawsuit. Articles started sprouting like mold. One blog called it the Strategist Schism. Another ran a think piece titled, "Who Really Owns the Client Relationship?" The comments were vicious, half defending Darren, half saluting me. One anonymous commenter just wrote that she was the brain behind the curtain the whole time. My phone buzzed with media requests I ignored and LinkedIn messages from recruiters I didn't trust. But what hurt most? Seeing former colleagues repost the lawsuit article without comment. Like silence was safer than loyalty. Ruth texted that night, "We stand with you. If you want us to go public, just say the word." I stared at that message for an hour. I wanted to say yes. Wanted to post receipts, screenshots, invoices dated after my termination. Wanted to scream the truth so loudly it burned Darren's glass tower to the ground. Instead, I told her, not yet, because this wasn't about noise, it was about leverage. And Darren just gave me the one thing he never meant to. A spotlight. Now everyone was watching. They wanted everything. My inbox, my texts, my Slack logs, call history, meeting notes, the Google Docs I'd renamed grocery list of paranoia. Aaron's legal team served up a discovery request so bloated it might as well have been labeled Fishing Expedition, sponsored by insecurity and regret. Diane smirked when she read it. Classic bluff. Throw the net wide. Hope to spook you into settling. Let 'em dig. There's nothing here except receipts they won't want read out loud. So we gave them everything. Every damn bite. My communication with Ruth, timestamped 3 days after my termination initiated from her end, not mine. Same for Blix and Juno, the whole parade. No solicitation. No poaching. Just former clients navigating toward the only lighthouse that had ever kept them off the rocks. We organized it chronologically, color-coded it, annotated it with little footnotes like we were handing over a museum exhibit titled, "Here Lies the Myth of Darren's Ownership." Diane prepped our responses with the precision of a sniper. Be gracious, thorough, let their own questions bury them. Still, it rattled me. Seeing your entire life dissected in legalese is like watching someone autopsy your reputation in real time. Every emoji, every innocent "let's catch up" was flagged, indexed, and measured for malice. But by the 3rd week of discovery, the tone shifted. They were grasping. The deposition requests started rolling in, and Darren couldn't help himself. Showed up to his own preliminary one like a discount version of Zuckerberg on trial, charcoal suit, smug grin, enough cologne to give the stenographer asthma, and then he started talking. That was his first mistake. He claimed I had enticed clients with confidential strategy docs, except we'd already turned over proof. I developed those strategies personally years before his firm ever had the accounts. He implied I had accessed internal systems post-termination and fumbled the dates so badly Diane got him to admit under oath that he might have misunderstood the timeline. He even alleged I'd bribed a former colleague to pass along information. But when asked for names, evidence, even vague descriptions, he got cagey. "I'm not at liberty to disclose that at this time," he said. Translation: I made it up and hoped it would stick. And then, like divine timing, it arrived. An email from a burner Gmail account. No name. Just the subject line, "You should have this." Attached was a PDF and internal memo dated 3 years prior, authored by Darren himself, distributed to partners. Subject line: Re-Client Language Key Person Clause. I opened it, scanned down, and there it was. Frankly, I think the key person clause is unnecessary fluff, but if it makes the clients feel warm and fuzzy, fine. Let Olivia have her little security blanket. I read it twice, forwarded it to Diane with one sentence. "Should we knit him that blanket for court?" She replied with a gift of a judge slamming a gavel. We didn't respond to Darren's latest claims. We didn't have to. The more he flailed, the more our silence screamed credibility. Every new accusation made him look less like a CEO and more like a jilted prom king who realized the crown didn't come with respect. I stopped pacing, started sleeping again, got a new desk. Real one, not the kitchen table. Clients kept coming. Revenue doubled. No team yet, just me, my contracts, and a growing line of people who trusted my name more than any firms. Darren wanted to paint me as a thief, but all his colors bled into one shade: desperation. And the more he tried to frame me as the villain, the more the truth looked like a mirror he couldn't stand to face. Found out about the subpoenas through a Slack message from someone I hadn't heard from in 2 years. Marcy Rivera, former senior project manager, corporate goth, champion eye roller, and the only person who ever dared to openly call Darren a PowerPoint sociopath to his face. Her message was blunt: "Just got dragged into the clown show. Subpoenaed for deposition. Thought you should know. Also, go get him." Oh, I stared at the screen. Strange warmth climbing my ribs. Not joy exactly, more like the feeling you get when the cold starts to leave your bones. The next day, 2 more messages trickled in. All former colleagues, all confirmed they'd been pulled in as witnesses. No one sounded panicked. If anything, they sounded relieved, like the truth had finally gotten an invitation to the courtroom. Diane called that afternoon, voice clipped but humming with quiet satisfaction. "We're seeing fractures. Internal. His team's not holding." One of the depot's reps said a witness went off script, started talking about how client retention was always tied to you, not the firm. I sat in silence digesting that. Then she added almost offhand, "I think it's time we talk about counterclaims." I blinked. Counterclaims, defamation, damages, maybe tortious interference depending on how far they push their media contacts. You've been hemorrhaging time, money, sleep. They dragged your name through the press with zero proof. I didn't say anything because for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to. Darren was unraveling without my help. The breaking point came from someone I never expected. Thomas Wu, our ex-business development analyst. Quiet guy. Always wore beige sweaters and looked like he was born in a spreadsheet. We'd only worked closely a handful of times, but apparently, he'd kept receipts and forwarded me a redacted copy of his voluntary deposition summary. It included this gem. The key person clause wasn't something Olivia pushed for alone. Clients requested it, specifically, Tainair Foods and Blixen. It became a non-negotiable after Olivia presented those accounts. I remember Darren initially calling it a vanity clause, then telling legal to include it so the contracts would close faster. That wasn't just validation. That was motive. History witnessed corroboration. I sat down in my new office chair, used, but mine, and let the gratitude wash over me in layers, not the soft kind. The kind that comes from knowing people saw what you did even if they never said it then. The kind that feels like finally hearing your own name said with respect you didn't have to beg for. I looked around, framed the moment in my head like a Polaroid, laptop open to contract drafts, box stacked with client onboarding forms, the faint hiss of my tea kettle about to boil. My empire didn't look like marble floors and interns fetching $8 lattes. It looked like discipline. It looked like earned ground. And Darren, he was standing in quicksand, throwing lawsuits like life rafts, not realizing they were already sinking. Diane's voice echoed in my head from that first call. He knows exactly what he lost. He just realized it's never coming back. We weren't just going to win. We were going to make it hurt. It started with a headline so absurd, I thought it was satire. Former strategist accused of corporate espionage in ongoing lawsuit. Published by a third-rate industry blog that once ran a story about email fonts that boost conversions, It quoted sources close to the matter who claimed I'd used internal trade secrets to lure clients, blackmailed a former intern, and my personal favorite, hacked into proprietary strategy decks stored on Darren's private server. I didn't even have the damn password to the office Wi-Fi half the time, let alone some covert access to Darren's imaginary vault of brilliance. Diane called before I could finish reading. "They're panicking." I laughed short, breathless. "He accused me of hacking. He's flailing," she said. "We'll file a motion to strike. It won't survive review." Darren wasn't done. In the span of 2 weeks, his team dropped 5 amended complaints, each more unhinged than the last. They alleged that I had a burner phone used solely for client sabotage, that I manipulated performance metrics in the CRM system to inflate my retention numbers, that I'd made threatening remarks to junior staff before resigning. Never mind I was terminated, and then came the piece de resistance. A sworn statement from a temp intern who worked 1 quarter didn't even remember my last name, claiming I once glared at her during a meeting. Diane didn't laugh this time. She just said, "We bury him in evidence, one motion at a time," and so we did. For every accusation, we filed documentation so thorough it looked like we were prepping a Netflix true crime doc. The hacked documents Darren cried about, all strategies publicly presented at client conferences 2 years ago. Performance inflation, pulled straight from quarterly reports signed off by his own hand. The burner phone, a number linked to my old Starbucks rewards account. By the 3rd dismissal, his legal team stopped smiling in depositions. Meanwhile, I said nothing. No press rebuttals, no tweets, no leaks to counteract his circus. Just silence. And that silence, it drove him mad. The louder he got, the more absurd his stories became, and the more the court, the industry started asking, if she's really the villain here, why does she keep winning? Because while he threw tantrums in court filings, I was onboarding my 12th legacy client. I'd hired 2 part-time assistants, was in talks with a CRM consultant to streamline the back end. My financial dashboard read like a dopamine drip, plus 63% revenue increase since launch. Client churn, 0%. 6-month projection doubled revenue. Almost all of it from clients who once sat across from me in Darren's boardroom. He still thought he could win this with noise, with intimidation, with volume. But what he never understood, what he still didn't get, was that I never needed to shout to be heard. I built trust, not theatrics. And now I didn't have to prove I was the better strategist. The numbers were doing that for me. Darren walked into the courtroom like he was headlining a TED Talk. Charcoal 3-piece, tie pin gleaming, posture so rehearsed he looked like he practiced in front of a mirror whispering alpha energy to himself. He didn't nod at me, didn't even glance in my direction. Just flashed that courtroom grin, the same one he used in pitches when he was selling my work as if it were his. He thought this was the part where the underdog folds, where the woman he publicly humiliated and legally harassed would finally flinch under pressure. I wasn't the one sweating. He took the stand during cross-examination, under oath, posture proud, chin lifted like he thought arrogance could override reality. Darren always believed he could bluff his way through anything as long as he sounded confident. Diane approached the witness box with the calm of someone holding a royal flush and a lit match. "Mr. Lowell," she said, flipping through a black binder so thick it could break bone, "like you to read a clause from your firm's own contract template, specifically the Tainair Foods agreement signed March 2021. She passed him a printed page. He glanced at it smug at first, then he froze. You could see the shift. His eyes locked on a paragraph mid-page. That red splotch crept up his neck. Darren's tell, the warning light before detonation. His fingers gripped the paper tighter, and for a long uncomfortable beat, he didn't say a word. Judge cleared his throat. "Mr. Lowell, proceed." Darren swallowed. His voice cracked on the second word. "This agreement is contingent upon the ongoing involvement of Olivia Reyes as the principal strategist. Should Ms. Reyes cease to provide direct oversight, the client may terminate the agreement without penalty or prejudice." Silence. You could feel the oxygen being sucked out of the room. Even the bailiff raised his eyebrows. The gallery leaned forward. Someone coughed. Court stenographer blinked like she wasn't sure she heard right. Diane didn't miss a beat. "Thank you. So, to clarify, your firm signed this contract. You acknowledged Olivia Reyes as the key person whose involvement was central to the client relationship." Darren tried to recover, voice fumbling like loose change. "That clause wasn't meant to be enforced. It was a formality. Clients wanted reassurances. It wasn't." The judge cut in. "So your claim," he said slowly, eyes sharp behind his glasses, "is that Miss Ray stole clients who were, by your own signed contract, legally allowed to terminate upon her departure." Darren's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. No words came. He just sat there blinking like someone had unplugged his brain. The judge turned to the clerk. "Strike the plaintiff's claim of unlawful interference. The contract speaks for itself." The sound that followed wasn't a cheer. It wasn't that kind of courtroom, but it was something better. The collective exhale of everyone who knew the truth, but had to wait to hear it spoken out loud. I didn't move, didn't gloat, didn't even shift in my seat. But inside, a fire I'd kept smothered for 6 months burned clean through me. Not rage, not vengeance, just that deep thudding release that comes when the world finally catches up to what you already knew. My jaw loosened, my shoulders dropped half an inch, and I smiled. Not for him, not for the judge, not for the reporters scribbling like mad in the back row. I smiled for myself because the war was almost over, and Darren just read his own eulogy. The gavel struck once. Sharp, final, biblical case dismissed with prejudice. Just like that, it was over. Darren didn't react at first. He sat there, statue still, eyes glazed, jaw tight. The courtroom around him rustled with quiet movement, papers being shuffled, bags zipped, leaf exhaled in hushed tones, but he stayed frozen like his brain couldn't process a world where he wasn't the smartest guy in the room. The judge stood. The bailiff called court adjourned. Diane leaned over and whispered, "Congratulations. He'll need a new hobby now, maybe stamp collecting." I nodded, rising slowly, deliberately. I didn't want to rush it. I wanted to remember the texture of this moment, the sound of shoes on courthouse linoleum, the rustle of fabric, low of reporters sniffing out quotes like bloodhounds. As soon as we stepped outside, the cameras swarmed. A dozen mics in my face, flashes popping like popcorn, questions firing off too fast to register. "Miss Reyes, how does it feel to win? Any plans to countersue? What's next for Reyes Strategy Group?" I raised a hand, not to silence, but to steady. "I'd like to thank the court for allowing the truth to speak for itself," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I've always believed that trust, real trust, can't be stolen. It's earned, and it follows you when you leave the room." I started to step back, but then paused. "Oh, and one more thing." They leaned in. Deep breath. "My firm has just finalized acquisition terms," I said. "As of this morning, Reyes Strategy Group will be joining forces with Caldwell Lowell's biggest competitor, Noble Partners." Reporters gasped like they just witnessed a magician pull a rabbit out of Darren's colon. But I wasn't done. "Every client we brought with us will now operate under the Noble banner. And as part of the agreement," I smiled just slightly, "they've agreed to sunset all competing accounts previously held by Caldwell Lowell." Translation: Noble wasn't just buying me. They were buying Darren's lunch, dinner, and next fiscal year. I turned, walked past the crowd, out onto the sidewalk where the sun had the nerve to shine like it was any other Tuesday. Behind me, Darren finally emerged. No entourage, no press. Just him, stiff and alone, jaw tight, staring at the pavement like it owed him an apology. His shoes scuffed, his tie crooked, the same man who once stood above me in a conference room and said, "You're replaceable, Olivia." But he hadn't replaced me. He couldn't because the business wasn't logos or overhead or who got top billing on the website. It was trust, voice, memory. And Darren had just learned far too late that you can't fire the foundation without the whole house collapsing. He looked up as I walked past just for a second. I didn't stop, didn't speak, didn't gloat, but I met his eyes. And in that look, I gave him everything he feared most. Silence, powerful, unapologetic, unbothered because I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. And Darren, he didn't just lose a case. He lost the illusion he built his empire on. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.